A poor girl finds a billionaire locked in a giant cage, but when she sees his face, she says, "You look just like the man in the photo my mom keeps in her purse." And what happens next shocks everyone. The sky was painted orange when June spotted the butterfly. It wasn't just any butterfly. Its wings glimmered with an impossible blue against the late afternoon sun. June had been drawing in the backyard, but her pencil slipped from her fingers the moment the insect floated in front of her. "Hi," she whispered, carefully extending her hand. The butterfly fluttered away, as though inviting her to join in a game. June glanced at the house. Mom was busy making dinner. She had mentioned something about onions and crying. She wouldn't understand about following a special butterfly. "Wait," June pleaded, running after the little blue speck that was now flying out the slightly open gate. She had never gone out alone, but the butterfly seemed to know exactly where to go. It turned at the right corners, stopped by low fences, waited when June fell behind. The quiet street branched out into others. June knew the way to school, to the corner store, to the playground. This path was new. The houses were more spread out, the sidewalks less tended. "Where are you taking me?" she asked, her curiosity outweighing her fear. The butterfly flew higher and then swooped over an old wooden fence. June stopped. The land behind the fence was large and empty, overgrown with weeds and scattered with the remains of never-finished constructions. A vacant lot, like the kind Mom always told her not to go into. The butterfly landed on top of the fence, opening and closing its wings as if saying, "Come on, come on." June looked behind her. She wasn't exactly sure how long she had been walking. The sun still shone, but lower now. Soon Mum would call her for dinner and realize she was gone. Just for a little bit, she promised herself, and her absent mother. She found a space between the fence boards. It was small, but June was even smaller. She slipped through easily, inhaling the smell of earth and tall grass. Her sneakers sank slightly into the damp ground. The butterfly moved forward, passing broken concrete and bricks. At some point, someone had tried to build something there. Now, nature was taking it back. June kept going, ignoring the small scratches the brush left on her arms. The butterfly seemed to glow more brightly now, as if it had its own light. And then she saw it. Hidden among tall shrubs and a pile of abandoned construction materials was a structure that didn't belong there, a cage. A cage big enough for a man, and inside it, there was a man. June stopped, suddenly aware of her own heart pounding. This was not normal. People didn't stay in cages. People stayed in houses, in offices, in stores, not in rusty cages hidden in empty lots. She should run. She should go back home. She should tell an adult. But the man moved. Just a bit. A slow movement, like every inch took great effort. He was sitting on the dirty floor, his back against the bars. The most striking thing to June was that, even in that terrible place, he wore a dark suit and a tie, now stained and torn, as if he had been taken straight from an important meeting to that makeshift prison. The blue butterfly flew in circles around the cage, as though showing June what it had led her there to find. Then it landed delicately on a wildflower growing between the stones. The man opened his eyes, tired eyes that took a few seconds to focus on the small figure standing a few yards away. June did not run. Something in those eyes felt familiar, and sad, and lost. "Hi," she said, in the same voice she used to speak to the butterfly. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question. It was obvious that he was... The man tried to sit up straighter, adjusting his soiled tie in a reflex gesture. His lips were cracked, his skin far too pale beneath stubble that needed shaving. Who are you?" His voice came out rough, like he hadn't spoken in a long time. "June," she answered, taking a small step forward. "Why are you in a cage?" "Is it a game?" The man shook his head slowly. "No, it's not a game." He swallowed with difficulty. You shouldn't be out here by yourself. It's dangerous." June tilted her head, confused. "But you're here." "Not by choice," he said, trying to smile, but managing only a tug of his lips, revealing a broken tooth. The tie, once perfectly aligned, now hung loose and stained around his neck. June moved a bit closer. There was something about his face, something that made her childish mind search for a memory. "You look like the man in the photo my mum keeps in her purse," she said suddenly, eyes wide at the discovery. The man froze. His eyes, which had been half closed in pain, opened completely. "What? Who is your mother?" "Mom is Mom," June answered, with a child's simple logic. "Her name is Nora. She has a photo of you in her wallet. You're smiling in the picture." The man grabbed the cage bars with injured hands, his fingers trembling, the thin fabric of his dress shirt tearing further with the sudden movement. "Nora," he repeated the name like a prayer. "Nora White." June nodded, surprised. "You know my mom." He took a deep breath, as if trying to take in the information. His gaze roamed over June's face, her cheeks, her nose, her eyes. Something in that look made June feel strange, like he was searching for someone else in her. "June," he said finally, his voice stronger now, "please, get help. Tell your mom you found me. Tell her I'm alive." "Are you sick?" June asked, noticing how weak he looked in the suit that must once have been elegant. "Yes," he answered simply, "and I need to get out of here. Will you do that for me? Will you tell your mum you found a man who looks like the one in her photo?" June nodded firmly. Helping sick people was the right thing to do. Mum always said so. "I'll bring Mom," she promised, already turning to go. "Wait," the man called out. How did you find me?" June pointed to the blue butterfly, still resting on the wildflower. "She showed me the way." And before the man could say anything else, June ran back across the lot, slipping through the broken fence, trying to remember the way she had come. The sun was dropping faster and faster. Shadows were lengthening. June ran even quicker, a new kind of fear growing in her chest. Not fear of the man in the cage, but fear she might fail to help him in time. Nora looked at the clock for the third time in 5 minutes. A cold hand seemed to squeeze her heart. June was late. 15 minutes since she had called her from the backyard. 15 minutes of silence. "June!" she shouted again from the back door, her voice jumping an octave with rising panic. The backyard was empty. A drawing lay abandoned on the ground. The gate stood ajar. "No, no, no," Nora muttered, running to the gate. The quiet suburban street stretched out in both directions, with no sign of her daughter. She was about to run left, toward Sandra's house, her neighbor, where June sometimes played, when she heard a voice. "Mom! Mom!" June was running down the sidewalk from the right, cheeks flushed, hair sticking to her sweaty forehead, eyes wide with excitement. Nora sprinted to meet her, crouching down to grab her by the shoulders. "Where were you? Don't ever do that again. I was—" The words died as she noticed the scratches on her daughter's arms and the dirt on her clothes. "What happened? Are you hurt?" June shook her head, still trying to catch her breath. "No, I'm not hurt, but he is. Mom, there's a man in a cage. He needs help." Nora blinked, trying to process the words. "A man in a— What are you talking about, June?" "A blue butterfly showed me the way. There's a big lot, with tall grass, and he's there, in a cage." June's words tumbled out, as fast as her racing heart. "He's hurt, Mom, and really skinny. He's wearing a suit, all dirty." Nora stood up slowly, gripping June's hand firmly. "June, this is very serious. You really saw someone locked up. This wasn't a game or something you imagined." "It's real, Mom. He talked to me. He asked me to get help." Nora felt a chill run down her spine. If it was true, but how could it be? Children imagine things all the time. Maybe June had seen a homeless person, or someone resting near a structure that looked like a cage. "And he knows you, Mom," June continued, tugging her mother's hand with urgency. "He asked if you were Nora White." That made Nora pause. Her last name. How would a stranger know her last name unless he really knew her? "How did he know my name, June?" "Did you tell him?" "No, I just said Nora. He asked if it was Nora White, and I said yes." June was practically bouncing with anxiety. "Come on, Mum, it's getting dark." "Did he say anything else?" Nora asked, trying to keep her voice calm while her mind raced through possibilities. "None of them good." June nodded vigorously. "I said he looked like the man in the photo you keep in your purse, and he got all weird. He told me to say he's alive." Nora felt the blood drain from her face. The photo in her purse, the only photo she kept, the photo she never showed anyone, but that June had once seen when looking for a tissue. "June," she said, her voice almost disappearing. "What did he look like?" "The man you saw." June thought for a second. "Tall, with a beard, but weird. Not like Uncle Mark's. And his hair is all messy. He's wearing a suit and tie, but everything is dirty. Oh, and he's hurt on his face. And skinny, really skinny." Nora swallowed hard. It could be anyone. It had to be anyone. "I'm calling the police," she said finally, guiding June inside. "You'll show them where it is, but we'll go with help. Understand?" June nodded, relieved to be believed at last. "He's going to be okay, Mum." "We hope so," Nora replied, already dialing the emergency number, her heart beating so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Officer Thompson looked from Nora to June, clearly skeptical. "So your daughter followed a butterfly into a vacant lot and found a man locked in a cage. Put that way, it sounded like a made-up story." Nora felt her cheeks burn. "I know how it sounds," she admitted. "But my daughter doesn't usually make up stories like this, and she knew details that had chilled her. Details about Joel, details June couldn't possibly know. "I can show you where it is," June insisted, tugging on the officer's uniform sleeve. "It's far, but I remember the way." Thompson sighed, looking at his partner, Officer Chen. She shrugged. "Doesn't hurt to check it out. Better than ignoring it and finding out later someone really needed help." "Okay," Thompson agreed. "We'll take a look. But you both stay in the car while we check, got it?" Nora agreed, holding June's hand as they walked to the squad car. Night was falling fast. How many hours had that man, whoever he was, been waiting for help? The drive was short, following June's hesitant directions. For a small child, the distance must have felt longer. But in reality, the vacant lot was less than 10 minutes away by car. "There," June pointed as they passed an old wooden fence. "Behind that fence." Thompson stopped the car and exchanged glances with his partner. "You two stay here." "Lock the doors." Nora watched, heart in her throat, as the two officers grabbed their flashlights and approached the fence. Thompson found an opening to squeeze through, and the pair disappeared into the dark lot. "It's true, Mum," June whispered, her voice small now that the night had arrived. "He's there." Nora stroked her daughter's hair, speaking soothing words she didn't entirely believe. It was impossible. It couldn't be him. Joel had disappeared from her life a long time ago, by his own choice. Even if he were in town, why would he be locked up? Why would anyone do that? Long minutes passed. Nora could almost hear the seconds ticking in her mind, each one stretching into eternity. Then, through the squad car radio, came Chen's urgent voice. "We need an ambulance on scene. We have a male, approximately 35 years old, dehydrated, multiple injuries. He's conscious and wearing a business suit. Repeat, we need an ambulance right away." Nora closed her eyes. So it was true. There really was a man locked up in there. But it couldn't be. The radio crackled again. "Dispatch. Victim identified himself as Joel Holloway. Businessman reported missing 3 weeks ago. Confirm identity." The whole world stopped. The air froze in Nora's lungs. The name echoed in her ears like a deafening bell. Joel Holloway. The man from the photo. The man June had seen. The man who had once been part of Nora's life for long ago. The man whose secret she had buried deep. "Mom?" June's voice seemed very far away. "You're crying." Nora touched her own face, surprised to feel tears. She hadn't realized she was crying. "It's okay," she lied, pulling June close. "You did the right thing. You saved someone's life today." In the distance, sirens began wailing, growing louder. Emergency lights painted the night red and blue. People were arriving, people with questions, people who would connect the dots. Joel was alive, and with him, the past Nora had carefully hidden was about to resurface, pushed by invisible hands that moved the pieces of a forgotten puzzle. The blue butterfly, unnoticed by everyone, landed on the roof of the squad car for a moment. Its wings glowed one last time in the pulsating lights. Then it took flight, disappearing into the night that now cloaked the city like a blanket. Central Hospital was buzzing with activity. Doctors and nurses hurried along the fourth-floor corridor, where the most serious cases were treated. Outside room 412, 2 officers stood guard, a necessary precaution when the victim of a crime might still be in danger. Joel Holloway had arrived the previous night, dehydrated, with 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and numerous bruises. The expensive suit he had on when he was found had been cut away by paramedics and replaced with a hospital gown. His tie, saved in a plastic bag with his other belongings, was the only item left of his once impeccable image as a successful executive just 3 weeks earlier. The doctors called it a miracle. Based on his condition, Joel should have died days ago. His resilience surprised even the most experienced professionals. "He has something to live for," commented Dr. Rivera after stabilizing his vital signs. "Sometimes, that makes all the difference." In his room, Joel slept under medication. His face, now clean, showed features that had once kept Nora up at night. Thinner, skin marked by recent scars, but still recognizable as the man who smiled in the photo in her purse. Detective Brennan waited for the right moment to ask necessary questions. Who could want to hurt such a respected businessman? Why keep him alive but locked up like an animal? What secrets did this man hold? And perhaps the most intriguing question, how had a child following a butterfly been the only one to find him, when dozens of officers had been searching for weeks? The hospital couldn't keep the secret for long. Before dawn, reporters began to gather in the parking lot. Speculation grew by the hour. Sources confirmed that Joel Holloway, CEO of Holloway Enterprises, missing for 3 weeks, was found alive, rescued under inhumane conditions, locked in an improvised cage, saved by a child who stumbled upon him by accident. Authorities are looking for clues about those responsible for the kidnapping. The news spread like wildfire. The morning had barely begun, and it was impossible to turn on the TV without seeing Joel's face on some channel. And in a small suburban house, just 10 minutes from that vacant lot, Nora watched it all with trembling hands. "Mom, it's the man from the cage." June pointed to the TV while eating her morning cereal. On the screen, an older photo of Joel from better times, confident, smiling, wearing a flawless suit at some corporate event. Nora simply nodded, unable to form words. She had spent the entire night awake, sifting through memories and doubts, wondering what would happen next. June Daz, with a child's innocence, viewed it all as a grand adventure. To Nora, it felt like the past coming back to haunt her. "Is he going to be okay?" June asked, licking her spoon. "I think so, honey." Nora finally found her voice. "The doctors are taking care of him." "Can we visit him? I want to show him my new drawing." Nora felt her stomach tighten. "Not right now, June. He needs to rest." What Nora really needed was time. Time to process. Time to decide what to do. Time she suspected she no longer had. The phone didn't stop ringing all morning. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, all wanted to know if it was true that Nora's daughter had found the missing businessman. Nora gave vague answers, shielding June from the sudden attention. By the 10th call, she let the machine pick up. "Mrs. White, this is Detective Brennan from the police. We need to talk about Joel Holloway's rescue. Please call back as soon as possible." Nora sat on the couch, staring at the phone like it was a bomb about to explode. It was only a matter of time before the questions began. Questions she wasn't sure she wanted to answer. On TV, another special bulletin started. The reporter, with a serious expression, relayed the latest developments. Joel Holloway remains in stable condition, but hospital sources say he is conscious and cooperating with authorities. The police continue to investigate the abduction, considered one of the strangest cases in recent years. Holloway, 35, is known for his rapid rise in the business world. Nora turned up the volume, every word about him hitting her like a stone. The businessman had recently finalized a multi-million-dollar deal with Vertex Corporation when he disappeared without a trace. Speculation suggests the kidnapping is related to this transaction, although the police have yet to confirm it. The images on the screen shifted to show the headquarters of Holloway Enterprises, an imposing building in the financial district. Nora knew that building. She had visited Joel's office once, at the start of their relationship. Back then, he only occupied a small suite, but he spoke about the future as if he could already reach out and touch it. "I'm going to build something that lasts," he had said, eyes shining with ambition, something that makes a difference. And apparently he did just that without her, without knowing about June. The report continued, now showing the Holloway mansion, where Joel's mother, Vivian, had given a brief statement that morning. "My son is a fighter. He always has been. We're grateful he was found and confident in his full recovery. The family asks for privacy during this difficult time." Nora felt a wave of bitterness rise in her throat. Vivian Holloway, the woman who had made it clear years ago that Nora wasn't good enough for her son. The woman who intercepted letters, blocked phone calls, built walls between Nora and Joel when he traveled for business. "Mom?" 144. June appeared in the doorway, clutching a colorful drawing. Nora quickly turned off the TV. "Yes, honey. I drew a picture of the blue butterfly. Do you think he'll like it?" Nora looked at her daughter, big, expressive eyes, an easy smile, a slightly upturned nose, features that weren't hers, features that belonged to Joel Holloway. "I'm sure he will," she replied, her throat tightening. Deerstoel with Teeshaven that afternoon, Nora finally returned Detective Brennan's call. The conversation was brief, professional. Yes, June had found Joel by accident. No, Nora didn't know anyone who might want to hurt him. No, she knew nothing of his business dealings, small, necessary lies, for now. Brennan seemed satisfied, but before hanging up, he added casually, "It's odd, you know. When we asked Mr. Holloway if he knew you or your daughter, he got very agitated. He insisted on thanking you personally." Nora closed her eyes, trying to control her breathing. Probably because June saved him. "Probably," Brennan agreed, though his tone suggested there was more to the story. "Anyway, once he's stronger, I'm sure you'll have a chance to meet." After hanging up, Nora stayed seated, phone still in hand. It was only a matter of time now. Joel was conscious. Joel wanted to see her. Joel would have questions. How long, she wondered out loud, how long until he looks at June and sees himself? She rose and walked to the small office where she kept important documents. At the bottom of the last drawer, hidden under a stack of bills, was a dark wooden box. Inside it, everything she had tried to bury. Letters never sent. Photos from a perfect summer, a positive pregnancy test, tucked into an envelope, and the document she had shown to no one, June's birth certificate. The father's name left blank, a choice Nora had made when she realized Joel would never return. But now he was back, led by a blue butterfly straight into a life he didn't know he had. Nora shut the box firmly, as if she could trap the past inside it. But it was too late. Buried time was already pushing the lid open, ready to spill secrets long hidden. Outside, the late afternoon sun shone on the yard where June played, unaware of the storm gathering. On the muted TV, Joel Holloway's face kept appearing, side by side with footage of the hospital, where he fought not just for his health, but for the missing pieces of his story. Joel was alive, the man she had once loved, the father of her child. And with his return, Nora's secrets wouldn't remain secrets much longer. Night finally fell, bringing silence to Nora's house. June slept peacefully, hugging the new drawing of the blue butterfly she had made earlier. After a day full of phone calls and news, the quiet felt almost unreal. Nora sat on the back porch, a cup of tea in her hands. The liquid had long since gone cold, forgotten as her mind wandered into the past 7 years. 7 years since she had last seen Joel. Now he was back, brought by a chain of events orchestrated by fate or by a blue butterfly. She closed her eyes, letting herself drift back in time, to when anything felt possible, when love seemed enough. Nora had just turned 22 when she met Joel Holloway. She worked as a waitress in a cafe near the university, saving money to finish her studies. Joel came in every day, sat in the same spot, and ordered the same black coffee. Unlike other suited customers, he always talked to her, never about the weather or trivialities. He asked about her dreams, her plans, and the books she read on her breaks. "You're different," he said one day while paying the bill. "There's a light in your eyes." Nora laughed, thinking it was just a fancy pickup line. But Joel didn't smile. He looked at her with an intensity that made her stop breathing for a second. "I'm serious. Most people I know have dull eyes. They go through life without truly living. You don't." The next day, he left his card with his phone number. A week later, they had their first date. A month later, Nora knew she was hopelessly in love. At 26, Joel already showed the ambition that would one day make him a successful entrepreneur. He worked at a small consulting firm, but had bigger plans. At night, he developed his own ideas, talked about markets and opportunities, about changing the world. Nora believed every word. "You can do it," she would say whenever he doubted. "You have something special." For a year, they lived a passionate love that consumed everything around them. They shared a tiny apartment, big dreams, and the certainty they were meant to be together. Joel spoke of the future, as if he had it mapped out. The company's growth, the house they would have, the children. Then came the opportunity. "It's on the West Coast," Joel explained, his eyes shining with excitement. "A serious investor, Nora. Someone who believes in my project." Nora felt her heart clench. How long? A few months, maybe a year. However long it takes to establish the company. "A year," Nora echoed, the reality of their separation sinking in. Joel cupped her face in his hands. "I'll come back for you, I promise. As soon as everything's set up, I'll come back and we'll build our life together. Or you can come when things settle down. I have to finish my degree," she reminded him. She had just 2 semesters left to graduate. "Then I'll come back," he insisted. "Wait for me." And Nora waited. At the airport, as she watched him board, he promised to call as soon as he landed. And he did. For the first few weeks, they talked daily, emailing and texting. Joel spoke about meetings, contacts, how everything was moving faster than he'd imagined. "My mom's here," he said about a month later. "She came to help organize some things." Nora felt a chill. She had met Vivian Holloway only once, at a disastrous dinner. The woman had made it clear, without directly saying it, that she considered Nora unworthy of her son. "A waitress," she had said, regarding Nora over the rim of a wineglass. "How quaint," Joel argued with his mother that night. He defended Nora, said he loved her, and that her background didn't matter, but the damage was done. Nora never forgot Vivian's look, calculated, determined, as if plotting something. 2 months after Joel's departure, phone calls became shorter and less frequent. "I'm busy at the company," he'd explain. "Meetings all day." 3 months later, a different call. Joel sounded exhausted, distant. "I'll be out of contact for a few weeks, a business trip overseas." "Where to?" Nora asked. "Asia. It all happened so fast. I'll leave you my mom's number. If you need anything, talk to her. She'll relay the messages." That was the last time Nora heard Joel's voice. The weeks turned into months. She dialed every number she had, but they went to voicemail. She sent emails that were never answered. Finally, desperate, she called Vivian. "Joel is very busy," the woman said, her voice as cold as ice. "He got your messages, of course. But please understand, dear, he's building a future. He can't be distracted." "Can I talk to him?" "Just 5 minutes. He's in Japan now, tricky time zone." Nora wrote letters, long letters, detailing her days, her feelings, her plans for when he returned. She sent them to the address Vivian reluctantly provided. "I'll make sure he gets them," the woman had promised. But the answers never came. Then came the positive pregnancy test. A life growing inside her, created during those last nights together before Joel left. Nora called every number she had, sent urgent messages. "We need to talk. It's important." Finally, Vivian picked up once more. "He's moved on," she said bluntly. "He thought it best not to stay in touch. You're young, Nora. You should move on too." "But I need to speak to him." "I'm pregnant." Vivian's voice grew even colder. "And how can we be sure it's his?" The accusation hit Nora like a slap. She hung up, unable to continue. In the following days, she tried a few more times, but Vivian's number had been blocked. Emails bounced back as undeliverable. The letters were returned to sender. Joel had vanished from her life as completely as if he had never existed, except for the child growing in her womb. Nora opened her eyes, returning to the present. The cup of tea was still in her hands, cold. The moon lit the small backyard. The tears she hadn't noticed before had dried on her cheeks. 7 years she had waited, not actively, not every single day, but part of her never stopped waiting. The same part that still kept that photo in her purse. She got up and walked quietly to June's room. In the darkness, she could see her daughter's shape asleep. The greatest gift Joel, unknowingly, had given her. The reason she had found the strength to go on. She raised June alone, with help from friends, working extra hours, studying late to finish her degree. She never put Joel's name on the birth certificate. If he didn't want to be part of their life, he wouldn't be forced to. But now he was back. And the truth, the one Nora held in her heart, was that she had never truly believed Joel had abandoned her by choice. Something about how everything happened felt off. The abrupt communication cut off, Vivian's cold words. Perhaps, Nora thought, lightly touching her sleeping daughter's face, perhaps it was time to find out what really happened. The invisible scars she'd carried for 7 years began to throb, reminding her of wounds never fully healed, wounds that would now have to be faced. The next morning brought a grey sky, as though even the weather was hesitant, torn between rain and sun. Nora stared at her open closet, trying to decide what to wear to the hospital. A part of her, the proud, hurt part, wanted to look good, strong, as though the last 7 years had been kind, not a constant fight. "Mom, we're going to be late," June's voice echoed down the hall. Nora grabbed a simple but elegant dress. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, she told herself. She just wanted to feel confident. June was already waiting in the living room, holding the drawing of the blue butterfly carefully folded in her small hands. She had woken earlier than usual, excited about the visit. "Do you think he'll like it?" she asked, showing the drawing for the 3rd time that morning. "I'm sure he will," Nora said, double-checking her purse to be sure they had everything. What she didn't admit to her daughter was the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. Fear, anger, confusion, and a small, treacherous spark of hope that refused to die, a spark that had survived 7 years of silence. The drive to the hospital was short, but it felt endless. June chattered away, oblivious to her mother's silence. She talked about the man in the cage, about how the blue butterfly had shown her the path, about how happy she was that he was getting better. "He looked so sad in that cage," June said, gazing out the car window. "Do you think he has kids?" The question hit Nora unexpectedly. I don't know, honey. Why do you ask?" June shrugged. "I just figured it must be sad to be locked in a cage far away from your family." Nora gripped the steering wheel tighter, focusing on the road. "Yes, it must be very sad." Parking the car, Nora took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. "Remember what we talked about?" she asked, adjusting June's light jacket. "We'll just ask how he's doing, give him your drawing, and then we'll leave. Mr. Holloway needs to rest." June nodded, though her eyes gleamed with the hope of a longer visit. "Can I tell him about my school?" "We'll see," Nora said, making no promises. The hospital was less crowded than Nora had expected, but reporters still hovered near the main entrance. She held June's hand more tightly and used a side entrance to avoid the cameras. The first headlines about Joel's rescue continued to attract attention, though slightly less intense now. At the reception, a young nurse smiled as she recognized June from local news photos. "You're the girl who found Mr. Holloway, aren't you?" she asked, leaning over the counter. "How brave you were." June smiled shyly, while Nora explained why they were there. "Room 412, 4th floor," the nurse said. "But I think someone's with him right now." The elevator rose slowly, every floor making Nora's heart beat faster. What would she say to him? How would she explain 7 years of silence? What if he asked why she had stopped trying to reach him? "Are you nervous, Mom?" June asked, squeezing her hand. "A little," Nora admitted. "It's been a long time since I've seen Mr. Holloway." "Is he your friend?" Friend. The word felt so inadequate, so small to describe who Joel had been. We were close, a long time ago. The elevator stopped at the 4th floor. Nora straightened her dress, took a deep breath, and stepped out with June by her side. The white corridor seemed endless. Room 408, 410, and then finally 412. They had just arrived at the door when it opened. An elegant woman stepped out, adjusting her expensive coat in a smooth motion. Nora froze in place, immediately recognizing the face from her worst nightmares. Vivian Holloway. 7 years had changed little about Joel's mother. Maybe a few more grey hairs expertly covered, maybe deeper lines around her eyes. But her posture was still perfect, her gaze sharp, her air of superiority untouched by time. Vivian stopped abruptly, her eyes widening for a fraction of a second as she recognized Nora. Then she glanced down at June, who clutched her drawing of the blue butterfly. Something cold and calculating passed across the older woman's face. "Ms. White," she said at last, her voice controlled. "What a surprise." Nora felt as if she were 17 again, being judged by those same eyes. But now there was more at stake. Her daughter was there, looking curiously at the stranger blocking the doorway. "We came to see Joel," Nora said, keeping her voice steady. June wanted to see how he's doing. Vivian studied the girl for an uncomfortably long moment, her gaze traveling over June's face with unsettling intensity. When she spoke again, her tone was calculatedly gentle. "You must be the little heroine who found my son. How brave you were." June, usually talkative, just nodded, instinctively stepping closer to Nora. "I brought him my drawing," she said finally, holding out the folded paper. "It's the blue butterfly that showed me the way." For a moment, something flickered across Vivian's face. A hint of emotion quickly suppressed. She looked at Nora again, and all traces of warmth vanished. "Joel is resting now. The doctors just gave him medication. June just wants to give him a drawing," Nora insisted. "We won't stay long." Vivian's expression hardened, and she took a step forward, effectively blocking the entrance. Her voice dropped to an icy whisper only Nora could hear. "He's finally coming back to a normal life. We're rebuilding what was broken." Her eyes flicked quickly to June. "I won't let you show up now and complicate things." "Not this time." Nora felt blood rush to her face, anger building inside her. "He asked to see us. The detective brought us here yesterday." "A mistake," Vivian replied quickly. "Joel isn't thinking clearly after what he's been through. I'm protecting him, as I always have. As I always have. As I always." The words echoed in Nora's mind, bringing back all the suspicions she'd buried over the years. The unanswered letters, the blocked calls, the messages that never arrived. "You don't have the right to stop this visit," Nora whispered, so softly, the words barely came out. "I was clear about wanting to see us." Vivian's face remained impassive, but her eyes shone with glacial determination. "You disappeared from his life for 7 years," she hissed, each word cutting like ice. "And now you appear, suddenly, with a child in tow. What's your plan exactly?" Nora met Vivian's gaze without flinching. "I'm not planning anything. June saved his life. She just wants to know if he's okay." "What a fascinating coincidence, don't you think?" Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly as she looked at June again. "Out of everyone in this city, it was your daughter who found him." The implication hung in the air between them. Nora felt her throat tighten. Vivian had always been a master at making her feel small, inadequate, and suspicious. "It was the butterfly," June chimed in, seemingly unaware of the tension between the two women. "She showed me the way." Vivian looked at the child with an expression mixing dismissal and curiosity. Then she turned back to Nora with a practiced smile. "Joel needs peace and quiet now. Not distractions from the past." "Mom," June tugged on the sleeve of Nora's dress, "can we give him the drawing now?" Before Nora could reply, Vivian turned to June with a calculated smile. "Why don't you give the drawing to me, dear? I promise I'll make sure he gets it as soon as he wakes up." June glanced up at Nora, clearly uncomfortable, clutching the paper to her chest as though protecting it. "We'd better come back another day, June," Nora said finally, placing a protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Mr. Holloway needs to rest right now." Vivian smiled triumphantly, then turned back to Nora with a politely distant expression. "Thank you for helping my son, but you can go now." That old contempt was there, in the subtext of her courteous dismissal, the same tone she used on the phone years ago, telling Nora Joel was too busy to speak to her. Nora swallowed, staying silent. Part of her, the young, insecure part, wanted to run away from that corridor, that hospital, those memories, but another part, the woman who had survived alone for 7 years, refused to be dismissed so easily. "Come on, June," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "We'll be back when Mr. Holloway is feeling better." Vivian arched an eyebrow, clearly interpreting the words as a retreat. "There's no need to bother him again. The family appreciates your concern." "He asked for us," Nora repeated, staring at Vivian. "We will come back." Something in Nora's tone made Vivian's expression shift subtly. A flash of worry, perhaps even uncertainty, crossed the older woman's face. Nora took June's hand and turned away. She could feel Vivian Holloway's gaze piercing her back as they walked along the corridor to the elevator. "Mom, why doesn't that lady like us?" June asked when they were far enough away. Nora sighed, searching for words simple enough to explain something so complicated. "Some people are very protective of those they love." "But we just wanted to give him a drawing," June insisted, her child's logic unable to grasp adult complexities. "I know, sweetheart." Nora squeezed her hand. "Maybe we can try again another day." As they waited for the elevator, Nora glanced back one last time. Vivian still stood there, a sentinel at the door of room 412, guarding Joel as she always had, keeping Nora at bay as she always tried to do. But something had changed, Nora realized as the elevator arrived, something fundamental and irreversible. In Vivian's eyes, beyond her usual coldness, there was something new, worry, maybe even fear. Because now Nora wasn't alone. She had June at her side, the child who, by some miracle or destiny, had found Joel when all of the Holloway's resources and connections failed, the girl who followed a blue butterfly and changed everything. In the car, June asked if they could come back tomorrow. Nora looked at her daughter, at the determination in her eyes, at the courage she'd shown following a creepy vacant lot to save a stranger. "We'll try," she replied, a new resolve growing inside her. 7 years ago, Nora had given up, not because she wanted to, but because she was alone against a wall of silence. Young, scared, without the means to fight a powerful family like the Holloways. But now it was different. Now she had June. And no matter how hard Vivian tried, she couldn't deny that it was this little girl who saved her precious son when all the Holloways' power and resources failed. "Mom," June said as they drove away, "I think he'd be happy with my drawing." "I think so too, honey," Nora answered, a new determination blossoming within her. "And we'll make sure he gets it." Because Vivian Holloway might have won a battle today, but the war was only beginning. And this time, Nora wasn't fighting just for herself or for a past love. She was fighting for something much bigger. She was fighting for the truth. The hospital room seemed smaller every day. Joel Holloway, sitting on the edge of his bed, gazed out the window at the world beyond, a world he had nearly lost forever. 3 weeks in the darkness of that rusty cage had taught him to value the simplest things: sunlight, wind on his face, the freedom to simply walk, and faces, especially 2 faces he couldn't get out of his mind. "Mr. Holloway, your medication." The nurse entered with a cup of water and some pills. It was the 5th week of recovery, and the doctors mentioned he might be discharged in a few days. Joel swallowed the pills mechanically, still gazing out the window. "Thank you, Claire." When she left, Joel picked up his new phone. His old one had vanished along with him on the day of the kidnapping. He scrolled to a recently added contact, Marcus Daniels, private investigator. He typed a brief message. "Any updates?" The answer came minutes later. "Address confirmed. We'll send details soon." Joel closed his eyes, feeling both relief and apprehension. Ever since he'd learned that Nora and June had tried to visit, and that his mother had blocked them, as he'd discovered through a talkative nurse, he knew he had to find them again. The door opened, and his mother walked in, elegant as ever, carrying a folder of documents. "The doctors say you might be discharged in 2 days," Vivian announced, placing the folder on the table. "Everything is ready for your return. The house is prepared, security's been tightened, and I've arranged appointments with the best specialists to continue your treatment." Joel nodded, without enthusiasm. Since Nora's thwarted visit, something had shifted between him and his mother. A heavy silence, unasked questions floating in the air. "You stopped Nora and her daughter from visiting me," he said at last, without looking at her. Vivian paused in the middle of straightening the papers. "You needed rest, not complications from the past reappearing suddenly. As you've always done, right?" "What are you talking about?" Joel finally turned to face her. 7 years ago. The letters, the calls. You always stood in the way." Vivian's face hardened. "I did what was best for you. That girl was a distraction from your goals. Look how far you've come without her." "Look where I ended up," Joel repeated bitterly, pointing at the bruises still marring his body. "A successful businessman who almost died in a cage, alone." "Joel, I've let you control my life for too long, Mother." His voice was calm but resolute. "I'm not going to let that happen again." Vivian studied her son, seeing something different in him. The near-death experience had changed something fundamental in Joel Holloway. The son who always followed her advice, trusted her decisions, was now looking at her with new eyes. "What do you plan to do?" she asked at last. "Start over," he replied simply. "Fix what was broken. Reclaim the lost time." "With her, after 7 years?" Vivian shook her head. "People change, Joel. She's not the same girl you knew." A slight smile touched Joel's lips. "You're right. She's not. She's a woman who raised an amazing daughter, a daughter who saved my life when no one else could." Vivian grabbed her purse, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Get some rest. We'll discuss this when you're thinking more clearly." After she left, Joel checked his phone again. Another message from Marcus Daniels. An address, a discreet photo of a yellow house with a small front yard, and a schedule when Nora usually arrived home from work, when June returned from school. Information that, in the wrong hands, would be invasive, but for Joel it was a map to a lost treasure. 2 days later, Joel was discharged. He declined his mother's offer to stay at the Holloway mansion. Instead, he took a cab to the hotel where his driver had left a car for him, a simple model, nothing like the luxury vehicles he used to drive. "Are you sure you're well enough to drive, Mr. Holloway?" the hotel receptionist asked, noticing Joel's still cautious movements. "I'm fine," he replied, though his wrist, just freed from its cast, still ached when he gripped the steering wheel. The address was in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from downtown. Tree-lined streets, modest but well-kept homes, a place where kids could ride bikes on the sidewalks without worry. Joel parked at a safe distance and watched the yellow house. It was mid-afternoon on a Wednesday. According to Marcus's information, June would be coming home from school soon, walking with a small group of children and a monitor. While waiting, he opened the glove compartment and took out a small package wrapped in blue paper. He had ordered the gift by phone, asking an assistant to buy and deliver it to his hotel. 20 minutes later, a group of kids appeared around the corner. Joel immediately recognized June, the same dark hair, the same energetic stride. She wore a blue school uniform and carried a colorful backpack. The group stopped at the corner, and the children began to scatter, each heading to their house. June waved goodbye to her friends and walked alone the last few yards to the yellow house. That's when she saw him. Joel had gotten out of the car and stood on the sidewalk, the blue-wrapped package in his hands, unsure of how to proceed. He didn't want to frighten her or look suspicious to the neighbors, but June didn't seem afraid. Her eyes widened in recognition, and a huge smile lit up her face. "It's the man from the cage," she shouted. To Joel's surprise, she dropped her backpack on the ground and ran toward him. Joel barely had time to brace himself before June crashed into his legs, hugging him without hesitation. The pain in his still healing ribs was overshadowed by the wave of emotion that swept over him. "You're better," June exclaimed, looking up at him with shining eyes. "You're not in the cage anymore." Joel laughed, genuinely touched by her enthusiastic welcome. No, I'm not in the cage anymore. The doctors fixed me up. Did you come to see our house? June asked, taking his hand naturally as if they were old friends. I came to see you and your mum, he admitted honestly. Is she home? June shook her head. She'll be back later. But Mrs. Peterson is here. She pointed to the house next door. She stays with me after school until Mum gets home. As if summoned, a grey-haired woman appeared at the door of the yellow house, clearly alarmed to see June talking to a stranger. June! What did I say about talking to strangers? She called, hurrying down the steps. He's not a stranger, June protested. He's the man I saved. The one from the cage. The older woman's expression shifted instantly as she recognized Joel from the news. Oh, Mr. Holloway, forgive me. I didn't. Don't worry, Joel said kindly. You're right to be cautious. Mrs. Peterson seemed torn between following safety protocols and acknowledging the unusual situation. June, come inside. Your mum will be here in an hour. But he came to visit us, Joel interjected gently. I can come back later when Ms. White is home. I don't want to cause any trouble. Stay, June insisted, still holding his hand. Mrs. Peterson makes chocolate chip cookies on Wednesdays. They're the best. The older woman blushed slightly but then smiled. Well, considering the circumstances, maybe you'd like to wait on the porch for Mrs. White. I can bring you some coffee if you'd like. Joel accepted the invitation and soon found himself sitting on the porch of the yellow house, a cup of coffee in hand, with June chatting excitedly by his side, showing him her school drawings, talking about her friends, and describing the blue butterfly that disappeared after that day. Mom said it went back to the forest, explained June, munching on a cookie. But I think it came just to lead me to you. Then it left because its job was done. Joel smiled, touched by her childlike logic. Then I owe a double thank you, to the butterfly and to you. An hour later, a car pulled up in front of the house. Joel's heart raced when Nora stepped out, carrying a work folder and grocery bags. She didn't see him immediately. She opened the trunk, grabbed more bags. June ran toward her, practically bouncing with excitement. Mom, guess who came to visit? Nora lifted her eyes, following June's pointing finger. The shock on her face was obvious. The bag slipped from her fingers, landing on the sidewalk. Joel stood up from the wicker chair, his still sore body protesting the sudden movement. They stayed like that for a moment, Nora frozen by the car, Joel on the porch, June in between them, looking back and forth without understanding the sudden tension. Hi, Nora, he said finally, his voice low and uncertain. Mrs. Peterson, sensing the intensity of the moment, quietly picked up her purse. I'll be next door, Nora. If you need anything, you know where to find me. She passed Nora, giving her a reassuring squeeze on the arm, and left, casting curious glances behind her. Joel walked down the steps, approaching hesitantly. Let me help, he offered, bending to pick up the dropped grocery bags, ignoring the twinge in his still healing ribs. That seemed to snap Nora out of her trance. No, you shouldn't. Your injuries. Their fingers brushed as both reached for the same bag. A brief electric contact charged with 7 years of absence. How did you find us? Nora finally asked. A private investigator, Joel admitted. I hope you don't mind. I had to see you both, to properly thank you. June watched their exchange with interest. Mom, he came to see us. Isn't that cool? And Mrs. Peterson gave him cookies. Nora looked from her daughter to Joel, clearly torn by conflicting emotions. Finally, she took a deep breath and gestured to the house. Would you like to come in? I think we have a lot to talk about. Joel nodded, relieved. He picked up some of the bags and followed Nora and June into the yellow house. The interior was exactly how Joel imagined, a cozy space with personal touches everywhere, photos of June on the walls, children's books piled on a low shelf, a sofa with colorful cushions. A real home, not just a place to live. Nora asked June to wash her hands and change clothes while she put away the groceries. Joel offered to help, and they worked side by side in the small kitchen, a charged silence hanging between them. You look well, he said at last. Nora gave a faint smile. You look alive. Which is a big improvement since the last time I saw you. My mother told me you tried to visit, and she stopped us. It wasn't a question. Joel sighed. I'm sorry about that. Vivian has always been protective. That's one way to put it, Nora replied, shutting the fridge door harder than necessary. Silence returned, heavier this time. There was so much to say, so many questions, so many explanations owed. But where to start? Why now? Nora asked at last. After 7 years, why come back into my life now? Before Joel could respond, June hurried back into the kitchen, now dressed in shorts and a t-shirt with a butterfly print. The moment for confrontation was postponed. Can we show him the house, Mom? June asked. Nora hesitated, then nodded. Sure, honey. But don't take too long. I'll start dinner soon. Will you stay for dinner? June asked, turning to Joel with hopeful eyes. He glanced at Nora, who shrugged slightly. If your mom invites me, you can stay, Nora said, her tone gentler now. It's the least we can do to thank you. The house tour was quick. Living room, kitchen, bathroom, a small office where Nora worked, and June's bedroom, which the girls showed off with particular pride. It was a small but enchanting space, with pale blue walls, a bed draped in star-patterned fabric and drawings everywhere. I made all these, June declared, pointing to her artwork. And that one is you. Joel moved closer to a drawing that stood out, a figure in a suit inside what looked like a cage. Next to it, a little girl and a giant blue butterfly. Something tightened in his chest, an emotion he couldn't name. It's really good, he said, his voice slightly shaky. On the way back to the living room, Joel noticed a photo on the shelf that he'd missed before. Him and Nora, 7 years younger, smiling, arms around each other in front of a lake. He remembered that day, a spontaneous picnic shortly before he left. She'd kept that photo, displayed it all these years. That's you, right? June asked, noticing his interest in the picture. The same man in the photo Mom has in her purse. Joel looked at Nora, who blushed slightly. Yes, that's me. A long time ago. Later, as they sat in the living room while Nora finished cooking dinner, June showed Joel her collection of books and toys. He listened with genuine interest, amazed by the life Nora had built, by the incredible child she had raised on her own. That was when the question came, naturally, as he watched June line up her favorite toys to show him. June, he asked gently, if you could have anything in the world, what would you ask for? The girl paused, thinking seriously. Her eyes scanned the room, the toys, the books. For a moment, Joel thought she might wish for something extravagant, a trip to Disney, a real pony, a castle. A rag doll, she finally answered. One you can brush the hair. Joel blinked, surprised by the simplicity. That's it? June nodded, her eyes shining. Mom said maybe for my birthday, but that's still far away. When is your birthday? In 3 months, she replied, raising 3 fingers. I'll be 7. 7. The number hit Joel like a punch. The same amount of time he'd been away from Nora. He did some quick mental math, and something odd flickered through his mind. But before he could chase that thought, Nora called them for dinner. The meal was surprisingly pleasant. June led the conversation, telling stories from school, asking Joel about what it was like being in a cage. Dark and scary, he answered simply, wanting to know if he had pets. Nora stayed mostly quiet, watching them interact with an expression Joel couldn't fully decipher. After dinner, when June went to brush her teeth and get ready for bed, Joel and Nora finally had a moment alone. She's amazing, he said, breaking the silence. You did a wonderful job, Nora. I did what had to be done, she replied simply. Alone. The word hung between them, loaded with unspoken accusation. I didn't know, Joel began. I never got your letters, your calls. I thought you'd moved on. Nora shook her head in disbelief. I looked for you for months, Joel. Called every number I had. Sent letters. Your mother said you didn't want contact anymore. Vivian interfered, Joel admitted, guilt weighing on him. I only found out recently. When I told her I wanted to see you, to thank you for June finding me. She confessed she intercepted our communications, said she did what was best for me. Nora swallowed hard, eyes bright with unshed tears. 7 years, Joel. 7 years, that won't come back. Before they could continue, June returned in her pajamas, asking Joel to read her a bedtime story. Nora reluctantly agreed, and he followed June to her room. When the story ended and June was nearly asleep, Joel remembered the blue package he had left in the car. He'd had it with him all evening. "June," he whispered, "tomorrow I'll bring you something special." "What?" she mumbled sleepily. "A surprise, but I promise you'll like it." "A doll," she murmured. Joel smiled, touched by the hope in her voice. "Maybe. Now go to sleep." When he left June's room, Nora was waiting in the hall. "I should go," he said. "I've already taken enough of your time." Nora nodded, walking him to the door. On the porch, they paused, facing each other with 7 years of absence between them. "Can I come back tomorrow?" Joel asked. "There's so much we need to talk about, so much we need to understand." Nora hesitated, but finally agreed. "Yes, but we need to take it slow, Joel. A lot has changed." "I know." He gestured toward the house. "Thank you for today, for letting me in, for letting me meet her." Nora knew he wasn't just talking about the house. As Joel drove back to his hotel, he couldn't stop thinking about June or her simple wish, a rag doll with hair to brush. That girl lived in a modest home with a working mother, likely without many luxuries. He could offer her the world, expensive toys, trips, anything money could buy. Yet she asked for something so simple, something any child would treasure from someone who cares. That girl could have asked for anything, and she asked for love, disguised as a toy. And Joel, driving through the night, promised himself he wouldn't disappoint June, or Nora, not this time. Saturday morning dawned under a clear sky and mild sun. Nora woke early, as usual, even on weekends. Joel's visit the night before had left her mind spinning with questions. She prepared breakfast on autopilot, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. The familiar morning sounds calmed her nerves. Routine was a safe harbor. June was still asleep, hugging the small wooden horse Joel had given her at the hospital. Nora paused in her daughter's doorway, observing the peaceful face, dark hair spread across the pillow, so similar to someone else's. The doorbell rang, snapping her out of her thoughts. 10 in the morning, too early for visitors. She dried her hands on her apron and walked to the door, her heart inexplicably racing. Joel stood on the porch, holding a large package wrapped in colorful paper with a pink ribbon. He looked different today, more relaxed, wearing jeans and a simple blue shirt instead of the suit he once always wore. "Good morning," he said with a hesitant smile. "I hope I'm not too early." Nora shook her head. "No, it's fine. June's still asleep, but come in." Joel stepped inside, placing the package on the living room table. He seemed more at ease, more like someone who belonged in that space. "Coffee?" Nora offered. "I'd love some." They sat at the small kitchen table. Joel looked around the cozy space, floral curtains, June's drawings taped to the fridge, a plant hanging above the sink. "How did you manage?" Nora asked, breaking the silence as she poured the coffee. "What? The doll? You barely had time." Joel smiled, taking a sip. "I have my ways. After I left here, I made some calls until I found the right store. The owner opened just for me." "The privileges of being Joel Holloway," Nora remarked, a slight ironic note in her voice. "Actually, the privileges of being a man desperate not to disappoint a child," Joel corrected gently. Nora nodded, slightly embarrassed by her assumption. Another silence fell, less awkward, but still loaded with unspoken words. The sound of sleepy footsteps in the hallway signaled June's arrival. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her eyes, her hair in every direction. When she saw Joel, her sleepy face lit up. "You came back!" she exclaimed, running to the table. "I promised I would, didn't I?" Joel smiled, surprised when June climbed into the chair beside him without hesitation. "There's something for you in the living room," he said, exchanging a quick glance with Nora. "Really? What is it?" June's eyes shone with excitement. "How about having breakfast first?" Nora suggested, placing a plate of scrambled eggs in front of her daughter. "But, Mom, your mother's right," Joel intervened gently. The surprise isn't going anywhere. June, reluctantly convinced, devoured her breakfast at impressive speed. In record time, her plate was empty. Done! Can I see it now? Nora and Joel shared an amused look. Brush your teeth first, Nora instructed. June practically flew to the bathroom. Left alone again, Joel and Nora exchanged a smile. Has she always had this much energy? Joel asked. Always, Nora confirmed. Since she was a baby, she'd wake up smiling. June returned in minutes, teeth brushed, face washed, wearing shorts and a t-shirt with stars. Now can I see it? Sure, Joel said, standing. It's in the living room. June dashed off, with Joel and Nora following behind at a calmer pace. In the living room, the girl circled the large, brightly wrapped box, her eyes evaluating its size and shape. You can open it, Joel told her. No second invitation needed. June tore through the wrapping paper with zeal. In seconds, the paper was on the floor, revealing a large box with a rag doll's picture. A doll with hair, June shouted, jumping with excitement. Just like I asked for. But it wasn't just any doll. It was a premium version with extra accessories, combs, ribbons, spare outfits, even a tiny tea table. Open it, hurry, June pleaded, barely able to contain her excitement. Joel knelt beside her, ignoring the stab of pain in his still recovering ribs, and helped her pull the doll from the box. Together they removed it, a handmade creation of soft fabric, long yarn hair, embroidered eyes, and a meticulously detailed dress. She's beautiful, June whispered, cradling the doll in awe. I'll call her Blue, like the butterfly. Joel smiled, touched by the connection. That's the perfect name. Nora watched the scene with an unreadable expression, joy mixed with something deeper. June, what do you say when you receive such a special present? Thank you, June exclaimed, throwing her arms around Joel in a sudden hug that nearly knocked him over. Joel froze for a moment, caught off guard, before hugging her back gently. His eyes met Nora's over the girl's shoulder, a look filled with unspoken emotion. You're welcome, kiddo, he finally replied. You deserve it. The next few hours passed in a world of their own, a world created by June, where her new doll was the guest of honor. Joel let himself be pulled into that universe without resistance, leaving behind the successful businessman to become just another participant in children's play. In the living room, now turned into an improvised beauty salon, June carefully styled the doll's yarn hair, while Joel held mirrors and ribbons as instructed. Have you ever brushed a doll's hair before? June asked, fully focused on her task. Actually, no, Joel confessed. I'm new at this. I can teach you, June offered seriously. It's easy. You start from the ends and work your way up. Joel watched, fascinated, as June demonstrated, her small face scrunched in concentration. There was something mesmerizing about the seriousness with which she approached this simple chore. Soon, the doll had a fancy braid decorated with colorful ribbons. Now it's your turn to brush, June declared, handing Joel the comb. I'm not sure I can make it look as good, he hesitated. It doesn't have to be the same. Sayo can do it your way. With large, clumsy fingers, hands used to signing contracts and shaking hands at negotiations, Joel attempted to copy the delicate moves June had shown him. The result was a crooked braid with strands sticking out everywhere. June examined it critically, then smiled. It's okay for your first time, Joel laughed, surprised by her graciousness. Thank you. I guess I need more practice. That's fine. You can come tomorrow again and I'll teach you more. The simplicity of that offer hit Joel in an unexpected way. The ease with which June included him in her world, the natural assumption that he would come back, as though his place were there with her. In the kitchen, where she was tidying up lunch, Nora could hear the laughter and the conversation. Several times, she stopped what she was doing just to listen, the deep rumble of Joel's voice mixed with June's high, excited chatter. A harmony she had never heard before, but that sounded strangely familiar. After lunch, the game evolved into an imaginary tea party. Joel sat in a chair too small for his frame. Wearing a paper hat June insisted was essential for the occasion. The doll, Blue, took the place of honor with her new hairstyle, while June served tea in empty cups and offered pretend cookies on plastic plates. More tea, sir? June asked in an affected voice, holding a tiny toy teapot. Yes, please, madam, Joel replied, playing along so seriously that June burst into giggles at every line. From the kitchen window, Nora watched. Joel Holloway, the powerful businessman, perched on a child's chair wearing a paper hat, pretending to drink tea with a 6-year-old girl and her cloth doll. That was when the tears began. Silent, unexpected, rolling down her cheeks without warning. Nora braced herself against the sink, letting the emotion flow. They weren't just tears of sadness, though there was pain. Pain for 7 lost years, for moments like this that never were. They were also tears of relief, from an old wound finally exposed to the air. For the first time, she saw them as she had once dreamed in the early months of pregnancy, when she still believed Joel would return, father and daughter, bonded by something deeper than words or knowledge, an invisible connection that even 7 years apart hadn't erased. Nora quickly wiped her face when she heard June calling her name, inviting her to join the tea party. She put on a smile and went to the living room, sitting on the floor with them, accepting an empty cup and complimenting Joel's paper hat. The afternoon passed with games, stories, and laughter. June showed Joel her favorite books, her drawings, her collections of colorful stones and dried leaves. Joel listened with genuine fascination, asking questions, treating each small treasure as if they were as valuable as the multi-million-dollar deals he once managed. And maybe they were. And the sun was setting, painting the sky orange. By the time June finally gave in to exhaustion, dozing off on the couch with the doll Blue clutched firmly, Joel covered her with a light blanket Nora handed him. She had quite a day, he observed, looking at the sleeping girl. I guess we wore her out. You made her very happy, Nora replied. I've never seen her so excited about someone. Joel felt warmth fill his chest. She's an incredible kid, Nora. You did an amazing job. Nora gestured toward the porch. Want to get some air? June will probably sleep for a while. The porch of the yellow house was small but welcoming, 2 wicker chairs side by side, hanging plants overhead, garden lights that automatically turned on at dusk. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the sky darken. Thank you for today, Nora said finally, for the gift, for spending time with her. It meant a lot to June. It meant a lot to me too, Joel replied. More than I can explain. Silence returned, more comfortable now, as if something had been settled. The lights in nearby houses began to flicker on, little yellow beacons in the growing darkness. Can I ask you something? Joel turned to face her. Sure. Why do you still keep my photo? He asked softly. June said you have one in your purse, and I saw the other on the shelf. After everything, after all the silence. Nora gazed at the horizon for a long moment before answering. Because even when everything fell apart, I needed to believe it was real. Her voice was gentle but firm. That what we had wasn't just something I made up. That the man I loved truly existed, even if he had moved on without me. Joel closed his eyes briefly, absorbing her words. I thought you'd forgotten me, he admitted. When I got no answers, when the calls stopped. I thought it was just a chapter in your life you preferred to close. Nora turned to him, surprised. I never stopped trying to reach you, Joel. I was the one who got no answers. What do you mean? I waited. Her voice grew more intense. For months. I called every number I had. I sent letters to the address your mother gave me, left messages with secretaries and receptionists. Nothing. Total silence. Joel swallowed, realization dawning. Vivian. Yes. The confirmation came bitterly, but without surprise. Your mother. She told me you had chosen to move on, that you didn't want contact, that you had other priorities now. She lied. Joel's voice hardened. I never got your letters. I never knew about your calls. When I asked about you, she said you'd stopped looking for me. That you'd moved on with your life. She showed me a magazine, Nora continued, remembering clearly. A photo of you at an event, arm in arm with another woman. He's found someone from his own world, she told me. And you believed it. What else could I do? You never answered, never called. Nora turned to face him, pain clear in her eyes. I even tried when I realized I was pregnant. I begged your mother for your contact. Joel went pale. You told her you were pregnant. I started to. She cut me off. She asked how she could be sure the baby was yours. She said you wouldn't want to know anyway. A heavy silence followed. 7 years of life shaped by lies, choices made on false information. I'm sorry, Joel said at last, for not realizing what she was doing, for trusting her when she said you'd moved on. Nora shook her head slowly. I fell for it too. I believed you'd simply chosen another life. Joel reached out hesitantly, brushing his fingers across Nora's on the arm of the chair, a delicate, almost shy touch. What do we do now? He asked quietly. With all this truth? Nora didn't pull her hand away. I don't know. I just know I can't keep pretending you're just the man June saved. Not after today. Not after seeing you two together. I'll talk to Vivian tomorrow, Joel said, a clear decision in his voice. I'm going to confront her about what she did. Be careful, Nora warned. She won't give up control easily. She already lost it, Joel answered with a certainty that surprised them both. The moment I realized what she did, that control ended. She just doesn't know it yet. Night wrapped around them, shading the small porch in gentle darkness. Two worlds that had been kept apart for so long were beginning to reconnect, cautiously but hopefully. Thank you for today, Joel said, still lightly holding Nora's fingers. It was more than I deserved. It was exactly what June deserved, Nora replied, and maybe what all of us needed. They stayed like that, side by side on the porch of the yellow house, linked not only by the past they once shared, but by the newly discovered truth of what really happened. Both victims of the same silence, orchestrated by Vivian, and for the first time in 7 years, that silence had finally been broken. The Holloway mansion stood imposingly against the morning sky, its white columns and tall windows reflecting the sunlight. Joel parked in the circular driveway, staring at the house where he'd grown up. It had never truly felt like home, more a monument to the family's ambitions than a place of warmth. After all he'd learned from Nora the night before, he knew exactly what he had to do. He couldn't put off this conversation any longer. The butler answered the door with usual formality. Mr. Holloway, your mother is in the library. Joel dismissed him with a nod and walked down the familiar corridor. Each step echoed on the marble floor, matching the resolve he'd never felt so strongly before. He found Vivian seated in her favorite armchair, reading reports with glasses perched on her nose. At 60, she remained elegant and commanding, hair perfectly styled, pearls at her neck, posture flawless. Joel, she said, looking up with a carefully measured smile. What a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect to see you today. We need to talk, he replied, staying on his feet. Something in his tone made Vivian's smile falter slightly. About what? About Nora. About the letters she sent me 7 years ago. About the lies you told. A heavy silence filled the library. Through the large window, the sun cast shadows of books on the shelves, creating geometric patterns on the Persian rug. I don't know what you're referring to, Vivian said at last, though her voice betrayed a tension rarely heard. Please, Joel said, stepping closer. Don't insult my intelligence. I spoke to Nora yesterday. We compared stories. Vivian removed her glasses slowly, folding them with methodical precision, buying time while she recalculated her approach. I see you found her again, despite my advice, she said, a note of studied disappointment in her voice. It wasn't advice, Mother. It was manipulation. Like so many times before. Joel, you're emotionally vulnerable after what happened, Vivian argued, standing up. That woman is taking advantage of you. Stop, Joel interrupted, with a firmness that surprised them both. You have no right to talk about her like that, not after what you did. Tense silence followed. Vivian studied her son as if truly seeing him for the first time. There was a new resolve in his eyes, a determination never there before. What exactly do you think I did? She asked eventually. You intercepted Nora's letters, blocked her calls, told her I didn't want contact, and told me she'd moved on. Vivian didn't answer right away. For a moment, she seemed to consider denying everything. Then something changed in her expression, not regret but resignation, as though she realized the game was up. "You were young," she said finally. "You had your whole future ahead of you. Opportunities that couldn't be wasted on a teenage romance. So you admit it," Joel said. No surprise, just confirmation of what he already knew. "I did what any mother would do. I protected your future." Joel shook his head in disbelief. "It wasn't protection. It was control. You decided what was best for me without giving me a choice. You would have ruined your life," Vivian said, her voice growing hard. "That girl, that relationship, they didn't match your goals, your potential. I had to protect your future." The truth finally out, hanging between them like a ripped veil. Joel regarded his mother, the familiar face now revealing a calculated coldness he had chosen not to see before. "And in doing so, you destroyed what I most wanted to live," he replied, voice low but firm. Vivian stepped closer, touching his arm, a maternal gesture she often used to calm disagreements, to regain control. "Look at everything you've accomplished, Joel. The company, the success, the respect, everything we dreamed of." "Everything you dreamed of," he corrected, pulling away from her touch. "You never asked what I truly wanted. You were too young to know what you wanted? And now, am I still too young? Do I still need you to decide what's best for me?" Joel walked to the window, looking out at the meticulously designed gardens, so controlled, so artificial, like the life his mother had planned. "How many other decisions did you make for me?" he asked. "How many opportunities, relationships, experiences did you filter because they didn't fit your vision of my life?" Vivian's silence was answer enough. "I'm going to pack my things," Joel said, heading toward the door. "I'm not coming back to this house." "Where will you stay?" Panic bled into her voice. "With that woman? With that child? My decisions are no longer your concern." "Joel, please," Vivian persisted, following him down the corridor. "Think about what you're doing. Don't throw away everything we've built over sentimentality." Joel stopped, turning to face her one last time. There was no anger in his gaze, just a surprising calm. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm starting to build something for myself, something real." He climbed the stairs to his old room, gathering some clothes and personal items into a single suitcase. When he came back down, Vivian was waiting in the foyer, composed, but with eyes that betrayed her worry. "You'll regret this," she said as Joel walked to the door. "When you realize the mistake you're making. The only mistake I made was letting you decide my life for so long." Leaving the Holloway mansion, Joel felt the weight of decades of expectations fall from his shoulders. For the first time in his adult life, he was genuinely making his own choice, and it was the most liberating thing he'd ever experienced. Rain fell in sheets when Detective Brennan called Joel. 3 days had passed since his confrontation with Vivian, and Joel was staying at a hotel near Nora's house. Though she'd offered the guest room, they agreed they needed time, for June, for themselves, to process all that was happening. "Mr. Holloway," Brennan's voice sounded urgent. "We have new developments in your case, significant ones. Can you come to the police station today?" "Did you find out who was behind the kidnapping?" Joel's heart sped up. "We'd prefer to talk in person, and you might want to bring your lawyer." An hour later, Joel and his corporate attorney, Martin Wells, walked through the doors of the Central Police Station. The place was bustling, typical of a Monday afternoon, but Joel hardly noticed the commotion. His mind was set on one thing, finally learning who had kept him captive for 3 weeks. Brennan received them in a meeting room, not a typical interrogation space. A good sign, Joel thought. Next to him sat Marcus Daniels, the private investigator Joel had hired to find Nora and also investigate the abduction alongside the police. "Mr. Holloway, Mr. Wells, thank you for coming so quickly," Brennan began, placing a thick folder on the table. "We've been working with Mr. Daniels for the past 48 hours, and the results are surprising." Marcus leaned forward. "Joel, we know who did this, and we have solid proof." "Who?" Joel almost whispered the question. Brennan slid a photograph across the table. The familiar face froze Joel's blood. Graham Voss, his partner for 8 years, his friend from college. The man who attended corporate events as a guest of honor, who dined at his home, who knew every detail of his personal and professional life. "This makes no sense," Joel murmured, staring at the photo. "Graham, are you sure?" Marcus nodded solemnly. "Absolutely. We traced financial transactions, phone records, and vehicle movements. He hired the men who captured you, rented the vacant lot through a shell corporation, and fabricated an alibi by leaving town on the critical dates. But why?" Joel still couldn't process the betrayal. "He has everything. He's a major partner in the company, has shares in every deal, has—" "It wasn't enough," Brennan interrupted, opening the folder. "Based on the evidence, including emails and messages from his devices, Voss intended to take over Holloway Enterprises entirely. Your disappearance was the first step. Martin Wells, the attorney, skimmed the documents. How long did he plan to keep you missing?" "From what we found, at least 2 months, Marcus explained. "Long enough for you to be officially declared missing, enabling him to trigger certain clauses in your partnership contract." Joel recalled the contract revision from the previous year. Graham had insisted on adding contingency clauses in case either partner became incapacitated for an extended period. At the time, it seemed prudent. Now the sinister motive was clear. "What would happen after 2 months?" Joel asked, though he suspected the answer. Marcus and Brennan exchanged looks. Brennan replied, "We didn't find explicit plans for a final outcome, but there were searches on his computer about body decomposition and remote areas a few hours from the city." Joel closed his eyes briefly, absorbing that revelation. Graham hadn't just betrayed him, he had planned his murder. "Did he act alone?" Joel asked, regaining composure. "From what we uncovered, yes," Marcus confirmed. "The men hired for the capture had no idea who you really were. They were told you were a debtor, and to keep you alive until further orders. They were paid through offshore accounts we traced back to Voss. We arrested those men 2 days ago," Brennan added. "They confessed and identified Voss as the ringleader." Martin Wells stood, adjusting his suit. "And Graham Voss? Has he already been taken into custody?" "We're on our way to arrest him now," Brennan said. "We wanted to let you know first, Mr. Holloway, given how personal this betrayal is. Also," he hesitated for a moment, "we thought you might want to be there." Joel considered it. Graham Voss, the man he'd known since he was 20, who witnessed his climb in business, who apparently envied him to the point of plotting his death. Yes, he decided. I want to see him when he's arrested. The Holloway Enterprises office occupied the top 5 floors of a downtown high-rise. Joel knew every corridor, every room, every detail of the place he'd built from the ground up. Now he followed Brennan and 2 uniformed officers to the executive level, where Graham was likely to be. The receptionist's eyes widened at the sight of Joel entering with the police. "Mr. Holloway, we didn't know you'd be in today." "Is Graham in his office?" Joel asked, ignoring the curious stares of employees starting to gather. Yes, in a meeting with the finance department," the young woman stuttered. Joel motioned to Brennan, who moved forward with the officers. In the main conference room, Graham Voss was standing by a PowerPoint presentation, gesturing animatedly to a group of executives. At the sight of Joel, he paled. "Joel," he said, forcing a smile. "I didn't know." "Graham Voss," Brennan interrupted, stepping forward with a paper in hand. "You're under arrest for the kidnapping and illegal imprisonment of Joel Holloway, as well as conspiracy to commit homicide." The silence was absolute. The executives looked from Graham to Joel, stunned. Graham, for a moment, looked about to deny everything. Then he saw Marcus enter the room with a box of evidence, and something in his eyes shifted. "You weren't supposed to be found so soon," he said at last, surprisingly calm. "It was a perfect plan." "Plan?" One of the executives stood. "What's he talking about, Joel?" "He abducted me and planned my death to take over the company," Joel replied, his eyes fixed on the man he'd once called a friend. "Driven by envy and lust for power?" "It's more complicated than that," Graham protested as the officers handcuffed him. "You always had everything so easily, Joel. The name, the family money, the connections. I worked twice as hard for half your recognition." Joel said nothing. There was nothing to say to justify such betrayal. "He has the right to remain silent," Brennan began, reciting his Miranda rights as he led Graham out of the conference room. Employees watched in shock as Graham was taken down the hallway in handcuffs. He kept his head high but avoided eye contact with anyone. Joel followed a few steps behind, feeling neither triumph nor pleasure, only deep exhaustion and, oddly, relief. That night, after dealing with the press and reassuring alarmed investors, Joel drove to the Yellow House. Nora waited on the porch, having followed the day's events in the news. "How are you?" she asked when he sat beside her. "Still processing," Joel admitted. 8 years of friendship, dinners, trips, confidences. "And all that time, he envied you. Apparently, in the emails they found, he called me the lucky one who never valued what he had." Joel sighed, running a hand over his tired face. Maybe he was right about that. Nora didn't respond. There were no easy answers for a betrayal that deep. The front door opened, and June came out in her pajamas, holding the doll Blue. "Mom said you had news," she said, sitting on the step below them. Joel exchanged a glance with Nora, who nodded slightly. "Yes," he answered, choosing his words carefully. "We found out who put me in that cage. It was someone I thought was my friend, but he wanted to take my place and keep my things." June frowned, taking in the complexity only children can. "And he went to jail, like in the books." "Yes, he was arrested. The police found all the proof." "So it's over?" Joel glanced at the night sky, at the stars shining after the day's rain. He pictured Graham being led to a cell, Vivian isolated in her mansion, the lost years that would never return. "It's over," he said finally. "What?" June asked, hugging her doll. Joel looked at Nora, then at June, feeling a clarity he hadn't felt in a long time. "The dark part of the story," he said softly. "Now we can start a new chapter." June seemed satisfied. For her, it was simple. The villains were defeated, the hero was safe, and life would be better going forward. Joel envied that simplicity, that childlike certainty. Summer arrived in full force, painting the sky a brilliant blue and flooding gardens with bursts of color. 4 months had passed since Graham Voss's arrest, 4 months of change, adjustments, and discovery. The city park was crowded on that sunny Sunday. Families spread out on the lawns, kids chased kites, couples strolled hand in hand along shaded paths. In a quieter corner, under the shelter of a large oak tree, Joel spread out a checkered blanket on the grass. "Is this a good spot?" he asked, looking at Nora carrying the picnic basket. "Perfect," she answered, setting the basket down. "Just enough shade, but we can still see the lake." June ran ahead a few yards, chasing a dragonfly hovering over wildflowers. Her bright laughter rang in the air, so carefree that everyone nearby smiled automatically. "June, come help us set up," Nora called, taking containers of food from the basket. The girl raced back, cheeks flushed with sun and excitement. In the past few months, June had blossomed even more. Joel's consistent presence in her life had added a new layer of security and happiness. Their make-believe tea parties now had a regular participant, bedtime stories featured new voices, and weekends became adventures for 3. "Can I put out the napkins?" June asked, already digging into the basket. "Sure, honey. Then you can help your dad with the cups." Your dad. The word still sounded new, though June had used it for almost 2 months. Joel vividly remembered the day she asked, over breakfast, if she could call him that. Nora had frozen, coffee cup halfway to her lips, waiting for his response. Joel, throat tight with emotion, had just nodded, unable to speak. The transition hadn't been easy. After Graham's trial, where he pleaded guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence, Joel had divided his time between rebuilding the company and building a relationship with his new family. At first, they had regular dinners and weekends together. Then came nights spent on the couch when bedtime stories ran late. Finally, 6 weeks ago, he officially moved in, his belongings mingling with Nora's in the yellow house that now felt like a true home. The truth about Joel's paternity had been revealed to June gradually. Nora and Joel agreed she deserved to know, but they wanted to handle it carefully. In the end, June made it simpler. I already knew, she'd said, startling the two adults who had painstakingly planned the conversation. We have the same nose, and we like the same stories, and sometimes you make the same face I do when I'm thinking. A child's perception, free from the complicated filters of adulthood, made everything clearer. I made a special sandwich for you, Dad, June said now, handing him a neatly wrapped package. It has extra jelly, just how you like it. Joel smiled, accepting the gift. Thank you, sweetheart. It looks delicious. Nora watched them with a mix of joy and wonder. She still had moments when all of it felt like a dream. Joel sitting beside them for a Sunday picnic, her daughter calling him Dad, the natural way they formed a family. As if those 7 years of separation were just a parenthesis in the story they were always meant to live. What are you thinking? Joel asked, noticing her distant look. How we got here, she answered, opening a thermos of lemonade. All the what-ifs that could have stopped this from happening. Joel nodded, understanding. What if June hadn't followed that butterfly? What if he had died in that cage? What if they'd never discovered the truth about Vivian? But we're here, he said simply, taking Nora's hand and squeezing it gently. That's all that matters. Lunch unfolded with light conversation and laughter. Joel talked about new projects at the company, now reorganized after Graham's departure. Graham's conviction had made headlines everywhere, but Holloway Enterprises was recovering well, backed by new investors and renewed market confidence. Nora talked about her job in marketing, where she had recently been promoted. Years of single parenthood had forged a determination now recognized professionally. June shared stories from school, her friendships, her daily discoveries. Her teacher had noted positive changes in the last few months. The girl had always been bright, but now she radiated a new confidence and calm. Sarah said my family is different, June mentioned, chewing on an apple. Because you two were apart and then got back together. She said her parents got divorced and never wanted to see each other again. Joel and Nora exchanged uncertain looks. How to respond? Once again, it was June who offered the wisdom they needed. I told her every family has its own story. And ours is like those books where you have to go through hard things before you get a happy ending. Joel felt his heart swell. How could someone so young understand something that so many adults never grasped? After they finished eating, Joel lay down on the blanket, using the backpack as a pillow. June snuggled up next to him, and together they began spotting shapes in the clouds. That one looks like a dragon, Joel pointed. No, it's a horse with wings, June corrected. A Pegasus. Yes, how did you know? Joel smiled, ruffling his daughter's hair. I read a lot of stories when I was your age. Nora watched them, legs folded, sipping lemonade. Even now, there were times it all felt surreal, how smoothly Joel and June had connected, as if the blood bond was stronger than the years apart. The past few months hadn't been all sunshine. There had been tough adjustments, painful conversations, and moments of insecurity. Vivian was still a sensitive topic. Although she'd attempted to reconcile, the relationship remained tense. Trust, once broken, takes time to mend. Joel insisted on family therapy. I don't want to repeat old mistakes, he'd explained. I want to do this right. It proved a wise choice. The sessions helped the three of them navigate the complex waters of becoming a family again. Practicalities of merging two adult lives also posed challenges. Nora, used to making all decisions alone, sometimes struggled to share responsibilities. Joel, accustomed to independence, occasionally felt out of place in the routines Nora and June had established. But day by day, small hurdles were overcome, and the new dynamic became more natural. Suddenly, June stood up, her eyes wide as she stared at something above them. Look, look, she cried, pointing at the air. It's her, the blue butterfly. Joel and Nora followed her gaze. Floating gracefully over the nearby flowers was a butterfly with bright blue wings, shimmering like pieces of the sky in the sunlight. Do you think it's the same one? Nora asked, getting to her feet for a better look. I'm sure. June took a few steps toward it, which didn't fly away. It's the same one that led me to Dad that day. Joel joined them, watching the butterfly circle above the three of them. almost as if inspecting the newly united family. "She knew," June said with absolute conviction, unique to children. "She took me right to you." The butterfly landed briefly on a nearby flower, opening and closing its wings slowly, as if acknowledging June's words. "Maybe she came to check if we did a good job," Joel suggested, draping his arm around Nora's shoulders. "If we fixed what was broken, did we?" June asked, looking between them. Nora smiled, her eyes meeting Joel's. Wordlessly, she slipped her hand into his, their fingers interlacing, an easy habit formed over the past few months. "Yes," Nora answered, "but we didn't fix it to make things how they were before. We built something new," Joel added. "Something stronger." The butterfly lifted off again, circling the little family one last time before rising into the sky, its brilliant blue wings blending with the infinite blue above. June waved goodbye, as though the butterfly could see the gesture. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind. Joel reflected on the symbolism of that tiny creature, a seemingly fragile insect that had changed the course of 3 lives with its whimsical flight. Could there be a purpose to that? Or was it just chance at work in mysterious ways? Whatever the answer, he felt deeply grateful. On the drive home, June dozed off in the back seat, worn out from running in the sun. Nora was at the wheel, while Joel gazed out the window, admiring the familiar streets of the neighborhood he now called home. "What are you thinking?" Nora asked, noticing his reflective silence. "How lucky we are," he replied. "How many people get a second chance like we did?" "It wasn't just luck," Nora said softly. "It was also choice. You could have taken another path when you learned the truth." Joel nodded, understanding what she meant. It wasn't only destiny that had reunited them. Not just that. It was June's bravery in following a butterfly, Nora's persistence in keeping that photo, Joel's resolve in facing his mother and choosing his own path. It was the courage to look back, confront the past honestly, and still choose to move forward. Together. When they arrived at the yellow house, the place that now belonged to all 3 of them, Joel carried the sleeping June inside. Nora followed with the picnic basket, watching how gently he removed her shoes before covering her with a light blanket. Later, they sat on the porch under a starry sky, and Joel held Nora's hand between his own. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For not giving up, for raising our daughter with so much love, for letting me come back." Nora leaned her head on his shoulder, her body fitting naturally against his as though they were made for each other. The Holloway family had returned, not to what they were before, but to something new, something stronger, built on love, truth, and conscious choice. And somewhere, perhaps, a blue butterfly watched, content with a job well done. If this story